Hello and welcome to the AIM webinar series. AIM is an alliance enabling the cooperation, development, and standardization of AIDC technologies. From barcodes to RFID to IoT, AIM is your advocate. Any organization with an interest in data collection is a beneficiary of these efforts. Membership provides an opportunity to influence the direction of the industry, develop policies and standards, access market reports, and engage new partners. Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items I would like to go over. First is our antitrust policy. It's the policy of AIM Inc. to conduct its operations in strict compliance with the antitrust laws. No AIM activity shall create even the appearance of a violation of the letter or spirit of the antitrust laws. Our collaboration and work product policy states that committee meetings as well as webinars are held for the primary purpose of advancements in our industry, which necessarily involves development of work product intended solely for the public domain. AIM has developed this policy for the protection of its members who engage in this important collaborative effort. You also notice that you are muted. You will be muted throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, you can send those to me through the Q&A option, which is located at the bottom of your application screen. We'll answer questions at the end of the webinar. Also, this webinar will be recorded and you will be emailed when it is available. Today, I'm here with two experts from Cavu Group, Patty Blessing, the Vice President of Business Development, and George Wilders, the National Account Manager. Today, they will be discussing enabling e-cycling through IoT. Patty, take it away.
Hey, Michael, thank you. Good morning, everyone. As Michael said, I am the Vice President of Business Development at Cavu Group. We're headquartered in Dayton, Ohio, and we've been in business for well over 40 years now. We're an active member of AIM, where we participate in a number of work groups, including UDI.
Yes, and I'm George Wilders, National Account Manager at the Cavu Group. I work with many of the leading pharmaceutical manufacturers in the United States. At Cavu Group, we focus on the needs of our customers in the life sciences, healthcare, medical device, and diagnostic industries to solve today's rapidly changing thermal management and monitoring needs using advanced sensor technology, including thermochromatic inks, RFID, phase change material, electronic monitoring devices, and specialty packaging, and much more.
While electronics have provided incredible insights into the conditions under which products are maintained throughout cold chain logistics, the result has been a significant impact on the environment. According to the UN Global E-Waste Monitor in 2020, electronic waste increased 21% over the past 5 years. The pharmaceutical industry is keenly aware of the need to reduce their carbon footprint on a global scale. Some of the factors that influence emissions created by the pharmaceutical industry include production, supply chain, chemicals, medical devices, and the largest impact is from the transportation of those life-saving devices and pharmaceuticals. Transportation emissions are necessary, but also important is protecting product during shipment to avoid the need for replacement shipments and disposable of unusable product, not to mention the loss of assets to provide support to patients in need. George, in 2020, you met with one of our strategic clients, one of the largest global logistics companies, to discuss a roadmap for meeting their customers' growing demands for more sustainable solutions. Can you tell us a bit more about that meeting?
Yes, certainly, Patty. My client was facing new requirements from their customer in the pharmaceutical industry to consider how to offer a more sustainable program for managing the shipment of temperature-controlled products. As a leader in the shipping industry, much of their focus is on getting shipments delivered on time, but equally important is the delivery of product under controlled conditions to protect the pharmaceutical's efficacy and safety to the patient. As a global shipper, they face many challenging obstacles when managing logistics for vaccines, life-saving drugs, and devices used in surgeries. They go beyond simply shipping the product. They work with the customer to ensure that the validated shippers are designed to protect the product, and that the data loggers that are included provide track and traceability for their clients.
Reuse has traditionally not been a leading solution for reducing e-waste. The electronic industry as a whole has focused much more on recycling the components and reducing the risk to landfill. But this program is a little bit different. George, as you met to discuss the new requirements, can you recap more details about the challenges that your customer and their customers were facing?
Yeah, Patty. Their original solution of a single-use device created a large amount of e-waste in shipments where temperature monitoring was most critical. The program in place at that time involved our single-use temperature monitoring device, which after providing the data was disposed of at the end of each shipment. The industry recognizes the value of temperature monitoring to identify weaknesses in their shipping routes. But as you can imagine, single-use loggers create a large amount of e-waste, which did not support sustainable practices. With an increased focus on being green, more and more corporations recognize that single-use devices are not a long-term option. The impact to the environment when disposing of a single-use logger includes lithium-ion batteries, plastics, and circuitry. These are all components that are very difficult to recycle and are rarely broken down and actually recycled, leaving lasting impacts on the environment.
So, reducing e-waste is clearly a big challenge. It requires a robust program that supports the core requirements of each of the stakeholders and also the management of the devices throughout their life cycle. What were the guiding tenets in developing this new strategy for your client?
Patty, it was pretty simple. Most important was the need to assure continued monitoring of shipments for temperature excursions. Ultimately, monitoring the pharmaceutical assures a safe and effective supply chain for patients and protects the brands and meets the terms of the agreement between the manufacturer and the shipper. Of course, also critical was sharing data about not only the temperature conditions during shipment, but also management of the physical assets and the data logger. It was clear that visibility of the data and the device was critical to the success of the program. Implementing an IoT platform was a perfect solution to ensure equal visibility to all stakeholders, streamlining customer support, and logistical planning and even production requirements. Of course, the solution also had to take into consideration one more thing. In a world where everything is cost conscious, we needed to consider the total transaction cost per shipment. Increasing the cost per shipment was not an option. After all, we were using the electronics.
George, we aren't talking about a few shipments with this program. This particular pharmaceutical client ships over 6,000 packages for just one product annually from a single distribution center. Packages are shipped across the United States 12 months a year, where the pharmaceuticals see all temperatures and conditions, as well as the inevitable shipping delays. We've all heard the stories of how hot a tarmac gets in the summer and how frigid temperatures freeze the Great Lakes during the winter. What were the key requirements identified for this new program?
It is clear that to reduce e-waste, we had to enable a multi-use data logger. Equally important was that each device needed to have a unique serial number to allow track and tracement of the shipment and to support visibility to all stakeholders, including the manufacturer, the shipper, and the recipient. In considering the best ways to serialize devices, we determined that a QR code provided an excellent tool that could be read by many devices and would allow stakeholders along the supply chain to access critical data.
Taking these specifications into consideration, the Cavu Group undertook the development of a connected solution that would deliver on a promise to reduce e-waste and utilize vital information, or IoT. After mapping out the processes, meeting with the stakeholders to understand their data requirements, modeling the solution, and validating the processes, we started some real-world testing. George, walk us through the steps of the program.
Yeah, Patty, no problem. The new program utilizes our American Thermal Instruments Logic Bluetooth data logger, a temperature logger engineered to support multiple logistics cycles. Our customer starts by activating the Logic BT logger with up to 4 temperature monitoring alarms. The alarms are set based on the unique requirements of the product being shipped, the validated shipper being used, and the lanes that the package will travel to its destination. The logger is placed into the package to monitor and collect data throughout a route of the shipment. Upon arrival at the destination, the device is removed from the packaging and is read by scanning the QR code on the logger. This scan either confirms that the temperature conditions were maintained or provides an alert to the user if a temperature excursion had occurred. The simple QR code scan uploads the data to our Cavu hub cloud, providing visibility to the entire supply chain. From the scan, the recipient can determine if the pharmaceutical can be dispensed or if there's an additional validation required. Once the shipment is complete, the logger is ready to be returned and reused. Using a pre-printed return label included in the shipment, the logger is returned to our offices. Upon receiving the logger, the QR code is scanned for tracking the device and data associated with the most recent shipments. The serialized unit is then inspected for power capacity, profile, and inventory tracking is ready to be sent back to the supply chain for the next shipment. Any stakeholder in the supply chain can scan the logger anytime during the process and can connect to the then current data to determine the temperature status of the shipment. This connectivity delivers the power of IoT to the edge where the data is needed most. The new program connects the manufacturer, the shipper, and the patient to critical data while also creating a recycle program that significantly reduces e-waste. At Cavu, one of our core values is the commitment to connectivity. For years, we have integrated NFC, or near-field communication, barcodes, and the QR codes into our product lines. We released one of the industry's first Bluetooth data logger for wireless data and temperature tracking to increase flexibility and enhance visibility to our time temperature data in a shipment. Recognizing that the platform drives decisions, our loggers connect to the Cavu Hub, an IoT platform that provides a shared platform across data for all stakeholders and also can be used with many of our other devices.
The QR code has also increased visibility to not only data collected through our products, but also provides access to processes such as programming, downloads like the user guides, and also supports asset management of the devices themselves. Again, tracking the device as well as the data. More important is that the Cavu Hub Cloud now provides trends, statistics, and valuable information that allow both the manufacturer and their logistics partner to better plan for packaging and shipping needs as there are shifts in weather patterns, delays due to traffic, and most recently, the impact of the COVID pandemic. It has been really exciting to see the results of the program. It has truly been a win for our customer, a win for the pharmaceutical industry, and a win for the environment. After running the program for the past year, we have been able to see some amazing results, including the return of used loggers has increased by 125%, which has resulted in a significant reduction of e-waste. The unique serialization through QR codes have enabled rapid downloading of data and device management while increasing visibility to the manufacturer, the shipper, and the recipient. And we have seen a reduction of more than 50% in the cost per use of the data logger as it is recycled multiple times. The program has seen good adoption, but we believe that as more and more people understand the value of reuse for the reduction of e-waste, we will see more and more companies look to solutions that leverage technology and IoT to help meet new goals.
A little bit about the Cavu Group. We have over 40 years of experience in delivering world-class solutions for temperature monitoring and management. Our in-house design and development teams allow rapid response to our clients' growing needs. We have partnered with some of the leading pharmaceutical manufacturers, life science manufacturers, and medical device companies to ensure safe delivery of millions of critical life-saving drugs, vaccines, and devices.
Thank you to AIM for recognizing our program. We appreciate the opportunity to share our solutions for reducing e-waste. At this time, we welcome questions from the audience. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or use the chat feature in the lower left-hand corner of your screen, and Michael can help coordinate the questions.
Okay, thank you, Patty and George, for your insights today. Greatly appreciated. And as Patty just said, we still have some time if you want to add some questions into the Q&A option, but I can go ahead and get started, Patty, if you'd like.
Sure.
So the first question we have is that this person was surprised by the, I guess, in their mind, low number of collected and recycled e-waste. I think that was on the second or third slide. And they were just wondering, do you have any idea if that number has gone up or it looks to be going up? And how do we work to get that number up?
Sure, I can start, and George certainly jump in. So the numbers certainly are continuing to increase as we have rolled the program out, and as more users understand the importance of responding and returning the loggers. We have actually changed the messaging a little bit over time, so that folks know that when they return that logger, it is helping for a recycle program or a reuse program that's better for the environment. People are very interested in contributing in any way they can, and that's we certainly see these opportunities to improve the program and to help explain why we're doing what we're doing. George, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, and also I think just the industry standard is people are used to a single-use data logger where they receive it in, either ask to download data or look at the screen to see if something has been excursion has occurred. So it's kind of also a little bit of just training people as we go through this.
Okay, great. Another question we have is, can you explain more about your real-time tracking and logging capabilities?
George, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so the actual device itself is not technically real time. It is a data logger that is enabled by Bluetooth in an app that we provide. When we talk about tracking and trace throughout the supply chain, you can connect to the device and have that information sent up to the Cavu hub. So the actual timestamp will be when it's connected via the logger to either any Bluetooth enabled device, either be a laptop, cell phone, a tablet, and that information will be time-stamped within the scan, but it is technically not real time in that it's sending out a signal, alerting you where within the supply chain it's at. It's one of the caveats to kind of the Bluetooth logger, but yes, so hopefully that explains the real time. Patty, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that was great.
Thank you. Another question we have is implementing RFID difficult to this industry?
I can certainly start with that one. We have used NFC with our loggers for years. And certainly, as with any RFID implementation, there are always challenges when you onboard people. Once you onboard them, though, they generally see the value of it. Across the ecosystem, in this case, having access to NFC readers is really one of the critical keys to success. So I would say it's not any different than any of the other challenges we've seen in implementing RFID over the last 20 years.
Great. Another question we have is, do you know if similar methods are used to eCycle, say, a battery or product with like mercury in it?
I don't know the answer to that. George, do you have any?
There are data loggers from a recycling standpoint that can be changed out. But again, once you do that, you kind of compromise some of the sensors. You have to get it recertified through NIST, depending on what application you're using. From a recycling standpoint, yeah, I mean, that's, I guess you could recycle the batteries, but from a throwing away standpoint, I wouldn't know the answer to that off the top of my head.
Another question we have is, what do you do with sensitive data that may be on or in these potentially tracked goods?
So the loggers themselves have security built in. Depending on the user, they have the ability to turn on pin lock capabilities to protect the data. As we all know, data is only as valuable as it is related to something. So the devices themselves only contain temperature and time data. They don't necessarily contain information about the product in the shipment. So it has to be correlated back through those scans to the database about the specific product. So reading the logger itself provides only limited amount of information, but that information can indeed be protected through a PIN lock that only accessible users have access to.
And so another question we have is, when enabling a traceability system like this, what are some of the most frequently asked questions or concerns that you hear from people?
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Patty. I'm sorry.
No, go on.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of there's questions around just the implementation of the solution. So, how do we get it back? Can you explain to us, our end users, if they do need to collect that data, how would they acquire that? So a lot of it's just training. Again, the implementation of trying to understand, where in the supply chain the critical data could be needed, as well as, where we can train people to understand that they need to ship them back. That kind of ties into the original question of, the numbers were a little low. As we continue to make sure everyone understands that this is a closed loop system, the data is required back to us. We're able to download it to the cloud for them. But again, it's just a lot of people getting used to the processes and changing training, as well as implementing SOPs for those particular aspects of the solution. Patty, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think you're 100% right, George. I mean, I think always the biggest challenge is just the user adoption, and that when you're talking about implementation it across disparate user groups, it's always how do you communicate and make it very simple for each user, because when you start and you're you're using a logger to collect data in a shipment, that the use of that logger is very known. As it moves through the supply chain, the different users have a different perspective and or a different interest, and in some cases very little interest because they're really more interested in the payload. So it's really how do you communicate and educate the entire supply chain that information is valuable, and communicate what that value is to each of the stakeholders.
Okay, great. Another question we have is, eData Logger is rechargeable. How is their autonomy? Does it have more functions like as its impact and humidity data?
So go ahead, George.
Just each data logger is actually, when we say multi-use in our industry, that means it can the data set. So you turn a logger on, there is a data set, and you turn the logger off and transmit that data to whoever is needed. And then you can reset that logger with a different profile. When we say profile, we mean configurations, but you can reset that logger and a whole new data set will be applied to that. So when we say multi-use, it's not really recharging because the battery is fixed within the device, but every time it comes back to us, we can reset it, refurbish it, and then send it back into the supply chain. There is a limit, the battery life is tied to that, but we do have a very robust battery system or battery in there. They generally last about a year, maybe a year and a half, depending on the conditions and how often it's used. But a multi-use logger to us is continually being able to be used in the supply chain. Hope that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, and then to respond to the second half, we do have a logger that also collects humidity data as well as an option. Both it would collect both temperature and humidity data, and so that is one option that we support.
Great. Another question we have is basically just, how has temperature monitoring solutions basically advanced over, the last 10 years or so, if you have any, if
Sure.
you can go back that far?
Sure. Well, we certainly can. As we mentioned earlier, we've been in the business for 40 years, and we started with chemical temperature indicators that were simple go, no-go solutions. And those are still very, very common today. And it gives a very simple indicator to the user that something has occurred. But what it doesn't give is detail about when it occurred or the details around the exact excursion. For over 10 years, probably over 20 years now, there have been electronic data loggers that have been available on the market that provide more granular data. And over the course of the vast majority of those loggers were USB devices that were a one-to-one connection to collect the data. Over the course of the last 10 years, we've seen quite a bit of progress made in the development of electronic data loggers. Our solution that we've talked about today is Bluetooth driven. We know that there are other solutions that are also driven by NFC connection, enabling a near touch to read. We know that there are GPS solutions as well for folks that want that real time, which was mentioned earlier. So as we look to the future, we will know that technology will allow lower cost loggers to provide more granular data, additional sensors, as well as different types of connectivity, including Wi-Fi and GPS, LoRa, things like that.
And I would also just add, as we talk about our Cavu hub or our database, our analytic database, which is a lot of different temperature monitoring people use, the predictive data as well. As we're gathering more and more information, if we can understand supply chains, times of years, and do predictive data, where someone can understand what the pack out should be possibly, or a time of day that is the best to ship, internationally or domestically. I think that's going to come into a big play in the next 10 years, is the being able to help people understand what they're shipping, why they're shipping it, and how to ship it.
Great. Well, it looks like that wraps up the Q&A section of this webinar. Thank you again, Patty and George, for your time and insights today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thanks, everyone.